Hi, Chris Newman. We're going to have another look at how this treaty has been interpreted with particular reference to contemporary tribal politics. Treaty politics on the Marae. There's the Marae, and I've detected two streams or two directions that the politics could go based on people's understanding of the chiefs and tribes of the treaty in the first instance. So the chiefs and tribes signed the treaty Treaty of Waitangi in 1840, and they had a very clear understanding of what they were getting involved with. They knew. These were warrior chiefs, savage nobles who had networks, communication networks that stretched across the Pacific all the way to London, who knew what was happening sometimes before it happened because they were anticipating. For example, in their warrior culture, they might plan 2-3 years ahead for a campaign, even growing special crops of kumara and moving them into storage in areas nearer the enemy tribe so that when they went there, they already had established supply and logistics. That kind of thinking was in the mind of the chiefs and tribes of 1840. When they entered the treaty with Queen Victoria and all the people of New Zealand, they were joining in a project which they fully understood. So how about right now, people who are of mixed bloodlines but who have some fractional Maori ancestry, today's fractional Maori tribes, I've detected that there's two directions that these people could go. One was that they agree with the chiefs and tribes of Te Tiriti. They are honouring them. They are honouring their ancestors, their tupuna. And then there are those who would disagree with the chiefs and tribes of Te Tiriti, and they would dishonour their ancestors, their tupuna. I'm going to follow each of these streams so that you can see how this could possibly play out. So if they honour the chiefs and tribes of Te Tiriti, of course there is no concept of a crown Maori partnership, corporate opportunities built because of the corporate government and corporate tribalism. That doesn't exist. There's a place called Tiriti, which is New Zealand. Everybody agrees and understood. They signed the treaty and the language for New Zealand was Tiriti because the letters Z and D is not in, or the sounds Z and D are not in the Maori dialects. And of course they are democratic now because they accept modernity. So their hapus would support familyism. And in turn there'd be an emphasis on individual responsibility. I am responsible for my actions because I am free. I am established and living, even though I might have a tribal family connections, I'm living in the modern world. Furthermore, there's a respect for maturity and wisdom that's based on honour. And that is a respect for modernity. Not that we all have to have, modernity doesn't mean having the latest cell phone, it means living in the world which has moved on from tribalism, from Stone Age or from feudalism or serfdom or whatever. We are living in this modern age. That leads to options, you might say, of democracy or republicanism. These are different types of democracy or different types of free societies. And that, of course, leads to cooperation and freedom. That is the vision of the chiefs and tribes of Te Tiriti. Let's look at the other extreme. Those who disagree with the chiefs and tribes of Te Tiriti, dishonour them. They are into this concept of the crown and iwi in a partnership. They believe in a place called Aotearoa, and they are also into a thing called co-governance, which means a split in the sovereignty of the nation. Now that is the stance of iwi corporations which operate on collectivism. Collectivism means that everybody's in a kind of a socialist, I'll get there in a minute, in a kind of a socialist interdependency. So there's a tyranny of the majority and people are now bound into conformity. And I met Maori folk in Australia who had left New Zealand to go to Australia just to get away from this tyranny. They wanted to be free. And the only way they felt they could do it was by physically separating themselves and going and starting a new life in Australia. And there are thousands and thousands of people like that. Now this leads to the erosion, this type of tyranny leads to the erosion of individual responsibility. People tend to let the tribal, let the collective, let what everyone else is doing, they go along with the mob and let that happen. It's passive, which leads to socialism and welfarism in many cases, socialism and welfarism. And the politics of socialism are where one person has to work and the other person reaps the benefit of the other guy's work, and there's no mutuality here. There's someone's producing and someone just feeding off them, and there's no mutual support. Now this leads to ultimately to communism and in the end to slavery. This is the end state, which is of course back to the original case, which is pre-modern here, pre-treaty. So you can see how this is heading back to a pre-treaty situation. So I've just detected that. I've made the distinction between the two directions, one which is an honour and an agreement with the chiefs and tribes, and the other which is a disagreement with the chiefs and tribes, a dishonour of your ancestors. And we've seen where these lead to. One leads to freedom and cooperation, and the other leads ultimately to slavery. Thank you for hearing this one through. This was called Treaty Politics on the Marae.